Hey everyone, welcome to Talks of Thailand. My name is Jon. Today's story is about a man who says Thailand allowed him to be the person he always wanted to be, but it made him do things that he now regrets immensely. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel if you haven't already, give the video a like, and let's get into today's story. It was Christmas 1999 when I went to Thailand for the first time. I'd been invited by my friend who had moved there a few years earlier after he got married there, and it was going to also be a Christmas present to myself, because up until then I never had a nice Christmas present from anyone. Especially never from a partner that I'd met, because I didn't really have much luck with having a partner, and also from when I was a child, when I didn't really get many presents because we were very poor, and my parents were there, but perhaps they weren't there emotionally. I don't know. It was just a rough childhood, and again, that's no excuse for anything. That's just what many people have to go through, a rough life. I was getting on in years to the point where if it wasn't for my friend inviting me to Thailand, I don't know what I would have done. I would have just continued doing the things I was doing, always feeling like something was missing from my life. Always feeling like something was wrong, and always feeling like there should be something bigger happening, yet not being able to point at what should be happening. Kind of just ticking over, hoping for the best, yet always imagining the worst. I was getting on in years, around 50 at the moment, and that was a scary thing to think about. The big 5-0. That's a large number to hit when you haven't hit any of your goals yet. I was looking forward to going to Thailand and enjoying Christmas and bringing in the new year, and the fact that my friend had invited me, I didn't feel like I was going into the unknown, because I most definitely wouldn't have gone by myself. I would have been too uncomfortable and too awkward and too afraid that something negative was going to happen, because back then there were still stereotypes about travelling to places like that. You heard on the news from time to time about people getting caught with a substantial amount of illegal substances and how they ended up in the Bangkok Hilton, and you looked at the conditions of those prisons and you thought to yourself, I don't want that to happen to me. Then you hear people claiming who end up in places like that it wasn't their fault at all, they had things planted on them. So how much of that is true and how much of that is not? I was quite paranoid, arriving, expecting something bad to happen, but that couldn't have been further from the truth. I had no plans in Thailand. I was going to be there for a couple of months. It was going to be a case of me having to leave the country one time and come back in again, so I could stay there for 2 months that I was there. It was Christmas, New Year rolled into one, plus holiday allowance of just taking me to myself. Some of it was going to be unpaid allowance, and it was going to be me getting back home about 3 months before I turned 50. I suppose this was also me sending me off into the 50s years, trying to give me something new to experience, something to perhaps allow me to dream for a change and think about the future in a positive way as opposed to in a negative one. Where I lived at home was a very miserable part of the country, very miserable. It was quite rough, run down, and sort of like the place that was left behind. You'd see people living in their nice houses, in their nice areas, in the beautiful countryside and everything that went along with that. Then you'd see people like me who lived in the pits, lived in the sort of houses that you wouldn't want to live in, but you had no choice. I suppose it was having such a miserable and boring life that I was the prime candidate to be able to get taken away or blown away and lose control in a place like Thailand, where everything seemed to be, at least in terms of the foreigners that went there, on a level playing field where every foreigner was just a foreigner. They weren't people like they were at home, and some were above the others. It wasn't like that. It was quite an exciting time and something fun to experience, but I had no idea how much better life could be, and because of how much better life could be, that's the question of how much worse life can be when everything comes to a head. I was flying from London Heathrow. It was about 2 hours for me to get there, and I got on the train and it was quite cold at that time and miserable, and looking outside thinking the world is closing in on you. You don't feel like you're able to be yourself, and be at one with yourself, and be at one with your surroundings. I felt so out of place and so uncomfortable, and that was just me through the whole of my life. I didn't really have many friends, and it was my best friend who moved to Thailand, so I didn't really have any other friends apart from him. I met up with people every now and then, but nothing too close. It was just that feeling of being enclosed in, not in the space that I was meant to be in, but enclosed in a way. Arriving at the airport, getting checked into the flight, was going to be one of those cases of having to change in the Middle East, which seemed to be quite extreme for me. I didn't understand that as a principle at the time. I had flown to places in Europe before, which was only a couple of hours or a couple of hours there, not long distance, but this was a huge flight, or 2 huge flights. Why didn't it go direct? I mean, they did have direct flights, but the price was more expensive, and that didn't seem to make sense either, because surely having to operate 2 planes and take off and land 2 planes and 2 members of staff, surely that should be more expensive. But you get it, that's just how the situation is, and you accept it for what it is, and picture yourself getting to Thailand, not knowing what to expect, and also believing, will I ever get there? Because the time stretched out in front of you. I think it was a 7-hour flight, then a 6-hour wait or something insane, then another 7-hour flight. That time when you're going to be in the closed and defined space, it was thinking to myself, will I ever get there? It's kind of like you're just saying goodbye and wonder what's going to happen. That was me in a nutshell as we took off. I quite enjoyed flying though when I went to Europe, but that was just for short distance hops. By the time a couple of hours had gone though, when you're sitting in that cramped seat, got the service and you've got the drinks being brought to you and the food, even still, it felt like an awful long way when we finally touched down in the Middle East, and I can't even remember which airline I flew on, so that's why I'm saying the Middle East and not giving you a particular one, because who cares? I can remember that airport being quite modern and quite sleek, yet I wanted to go for a beer, and they had a few places, even though it wasn't technically allowed in the country. They made exceptions, of course they did, when it comes to making money and the airport. I went for a beer and it was ludicrously expensive, and I thought, this isn't good. I've heard Thailand's cheap. But then you're such a newbie and you don't even think that you're not even in Thailand yet. Surely on the way to Thailand should be cheap too. Complete newbie I was, complete wrong ideas, but that's what I was thinking to myself. An eternity later, we got on the flight that's going to take us to Thailand. That was when I finally felt like I was on my way, and the time passed and we arrived, and I was really nervous as I was walking through expecting something bad to happen, like someone had planted something in my bag somehow, and I don't know, completely wrong thoughts to have. When you're a guy like me, from a place like me, and you haven't really done much in your life, and you're brainwashed by what people say and what people talk around you, you will listen to things like that and take them on board, and you believe that they're accurate, even though perhaps they're not. I needn't have worried though. I got through immigration in a breeze. The person must have been smiling as I was in a good mood after we went through. Bags were waiting, went out, and my friend was going to be meeting me. When I walked out, I saw him and he was basically right there. Next to him, there was this incredibly beautiful girl. I thought he must have been joking. I knew he'd got married, but I hadn't seen her or seen any pictures of her or anything of the sort. But I knew he'd got married, and I just thought he must be pulling at my leg. This must be someone that he's asked to come along and pick me up with me. Before any chance to say anything, he shook hands. Nice to meet you again, mate, and I was really excited at this point. But he just said, this is my wife. She said, hello, nice to meet you, Swadee Ka, and I'm just there in Thailand. I don't know what she was talking about at the time, what the words were, but I just said, that's your wife, and he said yes, as if I was saying, what do you mean? Of course she is, he said. I suppose I didn't cotton on yet that something like this was going to be available to me even. I just thought, wow, he must have had an incredibly difficult time for someone to find like that. Naivety at its grandest. I suppose that was me. We head out to his car, and this was Don Muang Airport. And as soon as you get onto the tollway and set off down to Pattaya, we weren't even going to be spending any time in Bangkok. Set off down to Pattaya, you're quite shocked about everything that you're seeing because it's so alien to you. But you've got this excitement that you can't quite describe. You know when you go somewhere in Europe and it seems a bit different, but it's not that exciting kind of different, it's a normal kind of different. This was the kind of different that it opened your mind to different possibilities, it opened your mind to a bigger world and to perhaps being able to reinvent yourself in a way. This is just looking on the outskirts of Bangkok, and in Bangkok when you're leaving, going towards Pattaya, thinking to myself, I could be a different person here, I could get to know this. I suppose that's what happens to many guys. They get trapped there, and they get emboldened by the things that they see and the things that they're able to do. I suppose as a bitter old man I'm really disillusioned, and I would say quite annoyed and upset by the state of Thailand today, because people such as me in their 50s, who had never really travelled before arriving today, just wouldn't get that same kind of raw experience that I would have got. It's a lot more sanitised than it used to be, a lot more globalised, yet you can still have same kind of things that happen, but not as fun. You've got to go to non-tourist areas to see the real Thailand, and I'm very Thailand-centric even to this day. Thailand defines who I am as a person, and I suppose that's wrong. I suppose it's wrong for many people to feel that way, because when you find yourself being defined by a country that you can't necessarily be a proper part of, it's wrong. You should be able, if you're being defined by a country, you should be able to be part of it. But I thought when I'd arrived that I was already a part of it, because I fit in straight away. My friend never told me where he met his wife. That was not really important. I never thought to ask. I didn't know about the scene and how things worked there, but I suppose it was quite obvious given how gorgeous she was and how much younger she was than him. He'd done very well. He'd made a bit of money in his life, and he'd arrived in Pattaya and dove into the housing estate where he was living, and he welcomed me into his house, telling me I could stay there. The plan was to stay there because that's just what you did, isn't it? At home, when someone's coming to visit, they're going to stay at your house regardless of anything. That's just how it was. You didn't go and stay in a hotel because you knew the price that went along with it and how the culture was. I suppose you do that in Thailand if you were Thai going to stay somewhere in the local family's area, perhaps in the village, for example. But he told me I could stay there, and he said after that you can go and stay in a hotel. But I told him thanks, thinking, well, can't I just stay here all the time? No idea how much the price of hotels were or anything. He showed me the spare room and said, are you ready to go out? And I said, yes, I can't wait, let's go. His wife was going to be meeting up with a friend or something along those lines. I mean, it's funny because I can relive this day like it was yesterday, and it was one of those days that introduced me to a whole new way of life, to the point where nothing else mattered at all. His wife was going out and we were going to go together, and it was only about a 15-minute drive away to downtown Pattaya from where his house was. He said he didn't want to drive though, he wanted to drink. He said while he does that occasionally, like laughing it off, as if to say you can drink and drive here and it's not a problem. I'm not really grasping what he meant by that, because I was so new to Thailand that it didn't really make any sense. He said we'll get a taxi, and you have to remember back then there was no Grab or anything of the sorts. It was just you need to find a taxi. He had a number for a taxi company who arrived not long later, a couple of $100 and we were in Pattaya proper. He took me first to Soi 6, and I'm not going to beat around the bush or anything and try to exaggerate it or to play it cool. Soi 6 was the best street that I'd ever seen in my life, and it changed my life from that moment on. I couldn't be the same person anymore. I couldn't see the world in the same way. I couldn't think about my home country in the same way. I couldn't think about my job in the same way. I couldn't think about myself in the same way. Everything was so different and so much better than life at home. It was just an amazing, stunning, beautiful place. And this is just as we'd arrived at the street, and I'm looking up the street. We haven't even been in any of the bars yet, and I'm blown away with this sense of euphoria, this sense that life does now finally have meaning. And I believe Thailand was the best place in the world for allowing such amazing things to happen. Such beautiful girls standing outside the bars, wanting to drag people in. This is probably going to be something very unpopular, but back then, there wasn't the same kind of tourist as there is today. You didn't see people from the Middle East or India or China or Korea or anywhere like that. It wasn't like that. It was like a Western playground. That's how it was sold to me, and that's how it was given to me, a Western playground. He said, let's go into a bar, and I'm saying, are you sure? Would your wife be okay? And he said, yes, I'm not going to do anything. So, what do you mean? I suppose I wasn't wanting to believe that you could just be with a girl like that if he wanted to be. That seemed too good to be true to me. We went into this bar, and before I know it, he's beckoning this girl over and she's talking to me. Now I'm speaking to my friend, and he just says, enjoy yourself, mate. There's a hotel around the corner, go and stay there instead. I don't know, I said, how much is that? And he said, probably 10 quid. 10 quid for a hotel? I was like, no, I don't believe it. But true to his word, though, when we arrived there later. We have a couple of drinks, and before long he leaves, and is as if he's introduced me to the real world, he's introduced me to the place where people are meant to live, where guys are meant to be themselves, and like he did his job and obviously he went back home. I was too engrossed in the company of this girl to know or care about anything or think about anything else. I had all my stuff at his place, and I thought, never mind, I'll sort that out later. If I'm going to be staying in a hotel, I don't have a toothbrush, and I'm worrying about these minor details when you've got this gorgeous girl next to you who clearly seems to be interested. Not only interested, more interested in you than you are in her. I think that was what drew me in even more, just how sublime she was in every single way, and I finished the night with her. Didn't really go for anything to eat, didn't really do anything, just arrived at the hotel, and the rest is history, as they say. I called up my friend in the morning. He had the wherewithal to get me a SIM card so I would be able to call him because, again, I was very shy and nervous sort of person who, in one sense, didn't know what to do about anything. And it was just one of those things. I called him up, didn't really say anything, but it was one of those welcome to Thailand. I was like, thank you so much for bringing me here. And I went to his place, got my stuff, and went back to the hotel, and it was only 10 quid a night. Unbelievable how cheap it was, and it was decent too. You can think 10 quid a night and think that's going to be a dive, but it wasn't a dive. It was a decent place in a very central location. You could walk to all the bars and to the beach and to everywhere you wanted to go. And it was just mesmerizing how Thailand had taken hold of me in such a way in the first day and the first 2 days and the first 3 days that I was there. Before long, it was coming up to Christmas, and it was Christmas happening around my friend's house, and he didn't really have any family. They were in England. He didn't really speak to them anymore. His wife didn't really celebrate Christmas much, so it was just him and her and a couple of her friends were there, and I brought a gift for him, nothing much. Christmas arrives, and he said, "I've got a gift for you," and he wheeled out this huge box, a huge box, and I'm thinking, what's he on? Then before I have a chance to unwrap it, this girl jumps out of it, and I was just thinking, this is insane. It was insane, but it was Thailand, and it was available, and it was fun, and it was cheap, and it was cheap. I have to keep saying that it was cheap, because that's what it was meant to be. It was as if, and I'm not just trying to say this to come across as being awful or anything, it was as if Thailand was purely set up and designed to be a brilliant place for people just like me, where people who were not necessarily unhappy, but they didn't have a lot, could give them something and be considered nothing, and they will be very happy with what they've got, because you've got this overarching feeling of just being in a wonderful place. This girl comes out of the box, and she didn't have any clothes on, and I'm just thinking, what does his wife think of this? Obviously, thinking about it, his wife must have worked in that kind of situation before, and she'd seen it all before, and he loved it. And this girl jumps on me, and I couldn't believe it. A great Christmas present, the best Christmas present I'd ever had. And my maid probably remembered me talking about how Christmas had been never fun for me, and he wanted to give me a Christmas to remember. I still remember that Christmas. I hadn't had a Christmas since that was as good as that. But it was wonderful in every single way, and that's the only way I can describe it now. Now, I knew it wasn't a permanent gift, and this is me chuckling a bit even after everything I didn't know. I knew it wasn't permanent, and it was situated in that way, and take it as it comes. And we had something to eat at Christmas, not a proper Christmas dinner. That wasn't something that was necessarily going to be something you would do in Thailand. But I think the question I was coming back to after we were leaving together was I need to move to Thailand too. The thing I realised that my friend did have a lot more money than I had. That was clear. That's why he was able to move there. I didn't have a lot, and I was trying to come up with a solution even then as to how I could make the move to Thailand and just be there. Not necessarily because I wanted a partner or wife, it wasn't about that. I was happy being single and living the way I was living. That's what I'm thinking as I'm heading back to the hotel with this girl who doesn't really speak much English, but she speaks enough that we can say, how are you? What do you want to eat? And things like that. Very basic English words that people like to say there, and it's just how it is. I suppose that was something that appealed to me and attracted me in a way that's quite difficult to put words to the point where this is so amazing and I'm loving everything about it, but the problem is that the days are going down. I probably spent 3 or 4 days with that girl, and she had to go somewhere, and she said if I wanted to see her again later I could. Before I had a chance to give her a call though, I'd already met another girl. Again, you have to remember just how affordable things were. You could probably spend £2,000 a month and see a different girl every day and eat out every day and spend the money for the hotel. It was just so affordable and so cheap that the thought of being anywhere else just didn't make any sense. New Year was a blast as well. That was a real blast. Went out with him and his wife and a girl that I'd met a few days before and really had a fantastic time. It's like my whole world is coming together properly, not falling down, coming together. And we rolled into the year 2000 and I said to myself, the last century, everything was bad for me. This century, everything is going to be great for me, and I'm going to be moving to Thailand as soon as I can. Before long, I had to leave to get out of the country, and I wanted to go back again. I went to Laos because that was what I was there for. I didn't have a visa to do anything, and you could just do it then. They didn't care. It was what Thailand was for. Thailand wasn't meant to care about things. Thailand isn't meant to restrict people entering the country because that just didn't make sense. That doesn't read Thailand to somebody like me who's been there for a long time. It doesn't make any sense whatsoever. So I went to Laos, and that was a very interesting experience. Very different to Thailand, yet similar at the same time. And I don't know how that comes across as being. If you can be in Laos and you can have that kind of Thailand vibe to it, yet it's more quiet. They don't have as much going on. They drive on the different side of the road. They don't have the nightlife scene to the point that it's as good as Thailand. I found myself in Vientiane, and I was only going to be there in and out, but I decided to spend a night just feeling adventurous and brave. I was in this little place, having something to eat, some really great French food. Something I was missing in Thailand was the availability of bread. Back then, they didn't have as much bread supply as they do today, and you went into 7-Eleven and got bread, and it was that really sweet, awful stuff, not proper at all. And I was just enjoying the French baguette and whatever else I was eating, and I noticed across the street they had this little bar. It wasn't a bar like you'd see in Thailand, far from it. It wasn't like that at all. But there were a few girls in there and a few what appeared to be people from the West in there too, and I thought after I lived, I'll go and have a look there. I walked in and I ordered a beer Lao, and what a great drink that is. Having a drink that was pennies, that beer was pennies. So cheap that you can't fathom how cheap it is. And I could have had 10 of them for the price of half for that same kind of thing at home. There are a couple of girls in there, and they're not working there, at least I didn't think they were, and they're coming and going, and guys are coming and going, and I'm having more drinks. Before long, this other girl walked in, and I didn't think or pick up on anything at that point. She was just very beautiful. Looked pretty similar to the girls I'd seen in Thailand, so I thought, is she Thai? Obviously, she wasn't though. She was from Laos. Again, similar in appearance to the people from Isan, because Isan is or was part of Laos, I think it was anyway. I don't really know much about that, or what's what, but I think she started talking to me because, as you might have guessed, I'm talking to her, and it was a case of she doesn't work in the bar, and she might try and find her luck to meet someone. I didn't know at the time that the rules in Laos, like you're not allowed to spend a night with a local unless you're married, that was something that was a very strict thing. Not necessarily something that would trip you up unless you were unlucky, but it was a technical rule and I didn't know about it. Of course, it was something that they could use against you if you wanted to, but would they? I don't know. I didn't know about that. But what I'm saying is I probably wouldn't have done what I did if I'd known about that rule. I found myself spending a bit of time with her and then leaving back to the hotel, and I thought I was like this international suave kind of gentleman. Not only was I able to be a catch in Thailand, I was also a catch in Laos, and in Laos it seemed to be even more exciting because I didn't know how to describe it. It was fun, and I didn't meet her in a bar as such. Okay, it was a bar, but she didn't work there, and it felt great, it really did. In the morning I said to her, do you want to go to Thailand with me? I can remember saying that, thinking it would be fun. Tell my friend, I'm going for a month, do you want to go with me? But she said no, she didn't have a passport, and that was the end of that. It was an amazing experience though, and I think it was that experience that made me think to myself, this is where I went to be. I'm meant to be in this part of the world, I really am meant to be here, and I'm starting to think about Thailand as being the great country, but perhaps I could be one of those guys that doesn't live in Thailand and live somewhere else. Perhaps Laos. Didn't know about the visas or anything, didn't know about the visas for Thailand or anything at that moment, but just live there. But even still, I'm really loving life to the point where, when I get back home, the thought of going back home was so dreadful and so awful, and I'm going to have to come up with some kind of solution to get myself to where I want to be, because it is the best place I've ever been, and life doesn't make sense without it. I thought about that girl from Laos for a long time, and I probably still have thoughts of her today, because that was an amazing experience that I wasn't expecting. I had no expectation that was going to happen. Back in Thailand and back in Pattaya, living each day like it was my last. That, I don't know, that's quite a cliche thing to say, and people say that all the time, but I really was. Every day was like my last day on earth, because back home I couldn't do this, and I think that's the problem that many guys face. You can't do that at home. You can't do a fraction of what you're doing at home. You can't find a place that's worse than this at home. If it doesn't exist in the same sense at home, it's just a different world, and that's what the thing is makes it the cruelest. I'm finding that I'm living a life what life's meant to be, and every guy needs to live like this if they want to. Every town should have a street where girls work like this. Every single town should have that. So if you need it, it's there. And it's not doing something like that at home. That's what's frowned upon at home. But it's not there at home. It's not available. And you never do that because it's not the same. And it's just so cruel. But even if it was the same, it wouldn't be anyway, because you knew what people like that are like. Although I came from a very rough background, I tried to elevate myself from that. If you met a girl, you could tell if she was rough or not, and in Thailand, I suppose you couldn't tell if she was from somewhere or somewhere else because you didn't know the difference. You didn't know the social hierarchy in Thailand or Laos or whatever, it was just what it was. So if you met a girl, she could be from the lower echelons of society, she might have a very crude accent, but you didn't know because you didn't know. At home, you knew what it was almost straight away, and if you met a girl like that, you could tell the difference almost straight away, and I wasn't attracted to that. It wasn't about the background or anything like that. It was about you could tell where a girl was from. But in Thailand, you couldn't. I think that was the thing. In Thailand, these could be nice people who were poor. In England, it wouldn't be nice people who were doing that sort of thing, and that's the difference. Nice people are not nice people. But that was what was great about Thailand. I suppose you could say this, even though I'm not trying to stand harsh, but it's because they were poor, and because they were poor like that, that you were able to meet them in the first place, and that they did the things like that available to people like me. That's what I'm thinking, and it's just so unfair that my country doesn't have something like this. Why isn't this available? It should be. It should be illegal for this not to be available. Like I said, every single town, or big town anyway, should have a bar complex of nice, real, sweet, attractive, beautiful girls working in it. Every single town should have that. Every single one. Not go to the rough end of town and see a girl who is obviously a bit of a lunatic to be doing something like that. That's not what you want. That's not acceptable. Anyway, that's my rant over, and it's true. It's awful to think about, really awful to think about, but it's just justifying in my mind the idea that Thailand is where I belonged and Thailand is where I needed to be at all costs. When I was flying back home, though, I just felt like life had no meaning anymore. I felt like life was going wrong for me the further we got away from Thailand and landing in the Middle East and seeing the guy or a couple of guys with a Thai wife with them. At least he's taking a girl back with him, and I'm there alone, arriving back home alone. A couple of months I'd been out of the best country of my life. It was like back home, it was the worst country of my life, and I need to get back to work, and that's awful. I need to go back to the house where I'm living, and there's no place to escape to. There's no bar to escape to, no girl to escape with. And I just started to hate life. I started hating life. And I suppose Thailand, it gave me everything, then it took it away, and then I was left with nothing. Before long, I'm 50 years old, and all those things I was just dreading coming up to 50 were starting to play with me. I'm old now, I need to do something, and the house prices hadn't got insane yet. I mean, they were high, but they hadn't got insane where I could have just sold my house and that was it, and got enough money together. But if I sold my house, I was going to probably have £40,000, and that was my life's work, £40,000. I just didn't want to do that, because I always thought it would be better to keep it. As I'm speaking to my friend as the time's passing, though, and it was a year later at this point, when I was thinking, should I go back to Thailand for another visit? I was missing it every day, and I was reliving the times I had every day. I was reliving that time in Laos as well. That was just fantastic. That was probably the better experience that I'd had in Thailand, because it was unique and different and not many people did it. It was, the same in one way, but different in another. It was that year when I was thinking, when I came to the conclusion, I didn't want to sell my house, I didn't want to, but I thought, I can't go to Thailand and come back again, because that would be a worse fate than death, it really would be. So I came to a conclusion a year after arriving back home, that I was going to sell my house, sell everything I had, and at this point it was about £45,000 I could sell it for, plus everything else I had, plus what I could do. I could get about £60,000 together. You have to remember that that was still close to 4 million back then, and how much things were in Thailand. I'm thinking I could spend 400,000 baht a year and I can last for 10 years, and 10 years is fine. That's what I was hoping for. Because Thailand was so cheap then, it really was cheap. Now you'd need a lot more. But I'd seen places that were cheaper, even cheaper than that, and I could find somewhere for rent for £100 a month that was clean and air conditioning and had a pool. Even in Pattaya, these things were available for cheap. Okay, it's not like the sort of place you might want to live in at home, but in Thailand, why not? So I managed to justify with myself that I would move to Thailand. This is 2001, and it's a long time ago now, and I promise you that this is relevant because although that's 25 years ago, Thailand is still my life, or should I say something else? I will tell you about that soon. So I found myself going back to Thailand after selling my house halfway through 2001, transferred all that money to Thailand. Again, so easy to open a bank account then. Just walked into the bank, say, can I have an account? They would say, yes, here you go. And I rented a place in Pattaya and got off to a good start. My friend was still living there, he was still happy, and I was thinking and noticing that he seemed to be getting a bit bored. He said his wife was great, but he missed going out. He missed all that kind of stuff, and he kept saying how his wife was just not as exciting as she used to be. He didn't really give too much away because that was his private business, and I'll talk about what happened to him now just to get it out of the way. A couple of years later, he gets a divorce from his wife. Luckily, he was financially sound, so even though he lost a house and lost a big chunk of money, he was okay and could still live in Thailand, and he got remarried and he's staying with her today, so fair play to him. I was just living in Thailand, and okay, I was going to the bars regularly, and I got it off to the point where I could spend about 40,000 baht a month, and I went out very often. You go to the bar, and when it's closing, the girls are leaving the bar, so you don't have to pay for the bar. And you would know which girls were meant for you and which girls weren't, and I'm trying to say this in a way to come across as making the most sense, but it wasn't like I was spending a lot of money, and life was great, and this was the life I wanted to live forever. Probably I had 3 years of living just like this, which was 99.9% perfect. The 0.1% of that was just me nagging throughout the time with my own thoughts that I can't afford to do this for eternity, because eventually the money will run out. I guess I'd probably spent about 1 million baht in those 3 years, so less than 400,000 a year, and I'm not going wild or drinking excessively in the bars, because I can't afford that. You can have some drinks, and more than you'd have at home, and the bars, when they're closing, that's when you can meet a girl, and it got to the point where you're not spending a lot, and it's possible, or it was possible, now it's not possible today. At this point, I was just doing visa runs, didn't even bother to do the retirement visa, but I could have done, and I was doing the retirement visa the first time around 2005. I had enough money in the bank to do that, but it was my plan to go back to Laos. That's why I always did the in and outs. I was doing that in Vientiane. And I felt like I wanted to try somewhere a bit different called Savannakhet to get the retirement visa. And once I got that, I extended it in Thailand. So I found myself around 2005 going to Savannakhet for the first time. At this point, I was a happy man, a content man. Life was great. Life was everything that I wanted life to be. And most of the time, when I went to Laos for the in and out, I did spend a night and try my best to meet a girl on all the occasions. Sometimes it works and sometimes it doesn't. In Savannakhet, I was going to be there for a couple of days this time, but I didn't need to be. Dropping off your passport when you arrive at the embassy, and then collect it the next day with the visa stamp in it. But I wanted to stay a few days to spend time by myself there and see what it was like and see if I could have any luck in Laos because I was still loving that. Hadn't got bored of it, and I suppose, given my financial situation, I wasn't stupid like some guys were who went crazy and wild and overspent. I didn't overspend, but I did everything to underspend. I met this girl in Savannakhet on my first night at a little place that, again, was just a nondescript sort of bar. There was hardly anybody in it, hardly anybody on the streets, and you're looking around and there's nobody there. And you walk into this bar and there are 2 or 3 maybe other foreigners there, and a girl working behind the bar. Then half an hour later, this other girl walks in, and I look at her and think, here's my chance. So I start speaking to her, I can remember her name, and this is very important. I mean, is it really? I don't want to give it away, what she was called, but I can still remember it. And it was an introduction, like, how are you? Then she goes off on this sob story, like I've only just met you, and why are you telling me all this, and what do I want to say? Apparently she was with this guy before who was from, again, I can't remember. Apparently he died, and he'd already built this house, and apparently it was quite close to where the bar was, and she likes to come here every now and then to see if she can meet someone, to take a load off, or whatever she said. I can't remember exactly, but I'm thinking why she's sharing all this with me. Also, I'm thinking she's very attractive and probably knew the game. I don't know what I was thinking. What happened after a couple more drinks was I told her I needed to go, hoping she would say, do you want me to go too? And by that time I was paying the bill. But she said, I'll pay for it. Don't worry, she said. I thought, wow, I've never seen that before, so I found that I'm leaving this place after something had happened that had never happened in my life before. Never in Thailand or Laos or anywhere. Never had that happened before. Not once had a girl paid the bill. Okay, it was only £3 or something, but I suppose that heightened my interest in her beyond any kind of interest I had in any other girl. So we're leaving together, and before long, the morning rolls around, and it was the first time where I just didn't want her to leave. I didn't want that to happen. I told her, don't leave, please. Didn't say that exactly, though, but I needed to go and pick up my visa. I told her I got a retirement visa that I need to collect. Do you want to go with me? And she did, and we went to go to get that. Then, as I was planning to stay for a few days, she took me to look at this house that she had, and it was really quite decent structure, not bad at all, a proper house, and this guy had built it, and apparently he died. Didn't say what had happened or anything. And she's showing me her house, and I'm thinking, wow, you've got this house, it's great. And it was clear that she didn't have any money, though. She had a house, but no money, or a little bit of money, but I don't know. She just said that she missed her old boyfriend, and she's hoping to meet someone again. And I think she was so forward with that because she'd done it before, and it had worked for her before, so she thought it was going to be easy. And perhaps I was drawn to that idea too, and I found myself just liking her. When it came time to go back to Thailand, I went and back to Pattaya, and I'm getting in touch with her quite often. And it's interesting, because I feel like I got a connection to Lao in a way that I don't know how I can describe. I don't know what it was. Something about that clicked with me. That was something I was enjoying more than I'd enjoyed something else. I really was. I mean, I'm just telling you like it was. I managed to extend my retirement visa a couple of months later, and I'm still speaking to that girl probably twice a week, just keeping that thing alive. When my retirement visa was extended and I was still meeting girls in Thailand because I was just living that life, I kind of making up for lost time, not going too crazy yet or not going wild yet. There was something about her though. She just said one day, and I hope to see you again, and we were kind of saying this regularly. And I'd been back in Thailand for probably 4 months at this point, already got the visa, and I decided I was going to go see her again. I asked her to come to Thailand. She said she doesn't really want to do that, so if I go there, that would be better. So I head out of Pattaya and go to Savannakhet. Stupid me, didn't get a re-entry permit, so lost that visa. Easily rectifiable in Savannakhet, you just get the new one, but it was a mistake though. When I saw her again, I just felt like I was whole again and like I was meant to be with her, for the reasons that I can't think about, and it was the excitement of the fact that she was from Laos and all the guys that you'd meet, their girlfriends were from Thailand, but my girlfriend could be from Laos. My everything could be Laos. I was thinking I was living this adventure that was beyond the adventures of the other guys who were still in Thailand, and at that time, because of that fact and because I'd met her in Laos, I'm just loving the feeling of doing something a bit unique. She said I could stay in her house if I wanted to, and the fact that she said that, I really felt was quite an amazing thing for her to say, and I was expecting it, or hoping it I should say. So I find I'm staying there, and a couple of days go by, and at this point, I believed I've met someone who I'm happy with, and she seems to be happy with me. And we start talking about the situation of me being in Thailand and her being in Laos. Perhaps this could be something that we could change and make it something more real. Perhaps we could stay together. I still didn't know anything about the rules in Laos, nothing ever happened in terms of that, but looking back it was something that you might have played things a bit differently. Probably been there for about a week, and got to the point where I'm starting to think I should just live in Laos instead. Should I live here and do something different? Okay, it's still cheap. Cheaper than Thailand on many fronts. The beer was cheaper. Certain things were more expensive, though. The things that I needed weren't. I was thinking to myself, should I live in Laos instead and be with her instead and commit to her? And it was clear that it was already appeared that's what she wanted to be the case. And I don't know what it was, but we spent a bit longer together, and I said to her, would you like to go to Thailand with me and spend a bit of time there? She said she would, so we went to the border, got stamped in, didn't check about the visa or anything, but they only gave me 30 days. Again, it wasn't really a problem, it was just an annoyance. We went down to Pattaya, and as soon as we got there, I just didn't feel right with her being there, and she didn't seem like she liked it very much, and it was clear that she wasn't necessarily a bar girl or into that scene, and she was just wanting to meet someone. I didn't have the same kinds of urges to go out all the time anymore, I just wanted to be with her, and we decided that after we'd been there for probably a month, we would go back to Laos. Just over a month, because obviously the visa thing, which I found out soon, just over a month. At this point, I felt like she was the one and introduced me to a friend, and she was great and everything is good, and we decided to go back to Laos and try to put something in place for me to be able to live there together with her. Got to the border again and get stamped out of Thailand, telling me I've overstayed. What do you mean? I haven't overstayed, I've got a retirement visa. Then they pointed, well, you didn't have your re-entry permit. And well, it cost me 3,000 baht, I don't know what it was. So we were able to stay, 6 days over. Not a problem back then, but even still I was quite alarmed. I should have got a re-entry permit before, and I didn't. Then I came out of the country, got a new visa, went back in, they didn't give me the proper stamp, and it was just a difficult time, and I can remember it because it made me feel really nervous. Anyway, it doesn't matter. That's by the by. And I'm in Laos, stamped in, and I got 30 days in Laos, and everything seemed to be great with her, and we were in her house, and in a way, life feels quite strange. All my money was still in Thailand, the possibility of opening a bank account in Laos was non-existent. At least, I went into some of them and they said no, and probably had in terms of Thai baht, maybe 2.5 to 3 million baht. That was what I had in the bank. Again, that still felt like a lot of money into the time of year that it was, and obviously things changed. I'd already had that in baht though, so it was okay. The more that time is going by, the more I'm feeling like I'm wanting to be with her, and she seems to want to be with me. Then I looked into the visa situation and what possibilities were, and if you paid some money, there was nothing necessarily as good as the visas in Thailand, and it wasn't the same kind of thing. But one thing that kept coming up was that I could work in Laos, get a visa to work there, and have to do it through a business, and it wasn't an ideal situation. You might need to leave the country sometimes, and you could just wing it and do it as it came. Have to invest some money and start something, but starting what? I didn't know. I was so in love with her, though, and so drawn to being with her, that that's what seemed like it was going to be the best thing to do, the best idea. And I suppose that's where things started to go a little bit wrong on the one hand, because although we decided to get married and we actually went to Thailand to get married, we thought that I'd just seemed to be easier to do that. I just remember the reason why, yet we were in Thailand getting married. Now that we were married, we kind of in love and everything was on one point, I thought, let's try and do something. It was also a solution of my money was going to run out eventually, so if we can have something that ticks over, then let's do that. And what we kept coming back to was buying stuff in bulk in Thailand and selling it in Laos, and you can't technically take stuff over the border, but if it's for personal use, I remember people doing that, and usually they'd be okay. Certain things you couldn't, and you'd have to be more careful, but you could have like a border trade, and let's do that. So I invested a little bit of money into this business to get set up, and it cost a lot of money, I suppose, probably way more than I should have spent, and I probably overpaid for things. By the time it was set up, I had about 2 million baht left, and I am able to stay in Laos with a number of restrictions, but I was married and in love. I should mention how old she was. She was 36, so it wasn't like she was too young for me. When we'd been doing that for about 3 months, all of a sudden, she falls pregnant, which wasn't expected, and that made me a little bit alarmed because we hadn't budgeted for that. We hadn't planned for that at all, and it was one of those worrying moments where, if this continues, the way we're going to be at this point, it wasn't like we're making any money, but it wasn't like we're losing money either. If it continues, though, then we're going to need to actually make more money, and that was a really worrying time, and I suppose that's when I went on a bit of a downward spiral mentally, because I'm concerned about her pregnancy. Not necessarily noticing any changes with her, not necessarily not wanting to be with her, not wanting to have a responsibility, though, when I didn't even know I was able to support myself, let alone somebody else. Then something happened which, to me, was a sigh of relief, but to her, obviously it wasn't. She had a miscarriage, which I must admit I breathed a sigh of relief for, and not in front of her. And I was upset in front of her, of course I was. But for me, it was like a gift from God that had happened, because it meant that we weren't going to have to commit to lots of things that we didn't want to have to commit to. For her, though, it really destroyed her. I mean, it really did. She was so upset, and she was beside herself, and although I tried my best to comfort her, living in this house that was hers and not having to pay for that, we've got things set up in a way that we're doing not so badly and it's bringing in some money. But again, it wasn't making a lot, wasn't losing, but it cost the money to set up. The problem is, though, as time's going by, 2 years of times go by and me eating into more money, slowly eating into money to the point where it was about 1.5 million left. We just drifted apart after she lost a pregnancy, and it was around 2008, I would say, when unfortunately we decided we weren't going to be together anymore, and I was left with a bad position because I didn't have anywhere to live that was like rent-free anymore. She was just a different person after losing the miscarriage, and after that, I didn't know what to do, but Thailand was undergoing some changes too. The only logical thing for me to do was to move back to Thailand. Thailand was undergoing changes that were more expensive, and I decided that was my only choice to go back there and get another retirement visa. Before I did, or which I did, most of my money was still there in Thailand, so I went and hoped to be able to get myself reset up there. Then I found myself back in Pattaya, don't have any purpose anymore. I don't have much money, but I'm still thinking in terms of how long I can stay there when I arrived in Thailand and how much things cost. And I suppose I was depressed because I wasn't with my wife anymore. We didn't even get a divorce, but I wasn't with her, and we didn't even try to speak to each other. It was just how it was. It was from there that I suppose I went into a big downward spiral. I started drinking a lot more, started going out more, and I'm doing the sorts of things that I did before that I could. Spending 400,000 a year, but I'm finding in 2008 I probably spent nearly double that. I dipped below my retirement visa extension money. I dipped below that doing what I was doing in the year 2000. So basically, it had doubled in price in Thai baht terms, and I didn't necessarily notice that straight away because I was just living it and doing it and spending what I was spending, and it's only by the end of the year when the money's dipped below my retirement visa money, and it's a huge shock. I managed to borrow a bit of money from my friend, who was still living there, to do my retirement extension again. By 2010, though, all that money had gone, and I was in a position where my whole life had just come crumbling down. The problem was, I didn't want to go back home. The other problem was, I had absolutely no choice. I had a couple of 100,000 baht, and I came up with a solution which I thought was a fantastic idea, which in hindsight just made things worse. But I didn't want to go home without a connection to Thailand. I wanted to go home knowing that I had someone waiting for me, a girl waiting for me. I met this girl at a bar in Pattaya, a girl I'd met a number of times over the few years and always got along with very well and always talked to and always chatted to and had a good time with. I decided I would ask her to become exclusive with me and live with me and go and live with the family. That was what everyone seemed to try to do. I'll go back home and I'll sort things out and I'll try to get her a visa to come to live at home with me. Then I can work for 10 more years, even though I'm approaching 65 then we can go back to Thailand. As long as I had a bit of Thailand with me, that would be all good and all great. And I thought I really did like her. I'm not saying I didn't. I'm not saying I was just coming up with this idea. I didn't like that. I just liked her a lot, and she seemed to really appeal to that idea. And I gave her a bit of money, and she went off up to the family, and I went home. God, it was awful landing in London. It was awful. I never wanted to go back there again. And there I was, 2010, around 59-ish actually, give or take. So it was me going to be working until 70, which I had to come to terms with because I've got this girl who was going to come and live with me soon, and it's going to be the next best thing. Up until about a whole year, I'm speaking to her all the time. I've got a job again and I'm sending money to her. I've probably sent her maybe £400 a month, which was insane even back then, absolutely insane. I was sending her this money, though we were talking all the time and everything is fine, and it got to the point where I believed I had enough money saved up to go back to Thailand and to put in for the visa for her. Because I had a place to live that I was living in, I had the income requirements, and I had everything in place. And okay, we were going to get married because I'd contacted the other girl in Laos and said I'd give her a bit of money to divorce me, so I could do it. Everything seemed to be going okay. Everything was going according to plan. I told her I was coming back. She said great, she'd see me in Pattaya. That's exactly what she said. I arrived back, and the first thing she said to me when I saw her was, I was so happy. I just wanted to, be with her for a couple of days without doing anything. She just said she had something to say. She said she decided she doesn't want to go to England at all. Then I had to ask her, what do you mean? What about all the money I've sent you? I'd sent her probably £5,000 at this point. But no, she doesn't want that. She's changed her mind. And to be honest, I was more bothered about the money I'd given than to her. Any girl would have been okay, I suppose. Although I did like her, I don't know if it was a huge love or in a huge thing like that. But I was in a huge bad state, not knowing what to do. This was all planned and all set up, and this is how it was meant to be. We had all the phone calls, we had everything in place for the visa, and I felt like I needed a bit of Thailand at home with me. I really needed that for my life to be complete. Everything was in place, and I just couldn't take another random girl with me, although I would have done if I could, and that's the thing, I really would have done. So I find that I'm in Thailand for a month, and now all of a sudden this has gone wrong. I've lost money there. My wife from Laos, who is still married, comes to Thailand, and when I saw her, I just missed what we had, and she seemed to miss what we had, and I told her the situation and what was going on. You know, how I don't have much money, and she said to me, I miss you, and I don't know what it was, not what it was at all, what she was saying. Just instead of getting divorced, I find I'm spending a bit more time with her, and the days are going down to when I need to go back. I thought to myself, what if she comes to be with England with me, and then we can retire in Laos later? I said to her, how about if we go back together? And she said, okay. We've been apart for a long time at this point, and I'd been living in Thailand and had lots of girls and been in England for a long time, so it was a wild number of years when we weren't together. Didn't really speak much apart from the odd occasional how do you do kind of thing, and now we're thinking about moving her to England with me. I came up with this solution, and okay, let's hope she can come back and be with me in England. At least that would be okay. Then, if we fast forward a year, she is in England with me, and I was still working. I was able to work, able to make money, and I believed everything was going according to plan and going okay. It was around about 2015 when I don't have anything to worry about, at least I think. I'm not where I want to be, but I've got my wife with me, and we're happy again, and it's fun, but it's not as fun as it used to be. In 2015, though, that's when it all went wrong. Absolutely all went wrong. Because I found out that my wife, when I was at work, she was going out and doing things that you wouldn't want your wife to do. I confronted her about it, and she said she was bored and lonely when I wasn't there. That all came crashing down then. Got divorced from her properly because I could do that at home, and I'm just in a bad position. Luckily, I didn't own a house and she couldn't take any money from me, and luckily, anytime I saved money, I sent it to my bank account in Thailand, and I thought that was always the best idea, and at this point, I probably had about 1 million baht in the bank. Not a fortune, but it was something. She went off and did whatever she did. I don't know what she did, and I never spoke to her again after that, but I'm thinking, why can't I ever catch a break in life? Thailand and that part of the world has been part of my life for 15 years more, and all I want to do is be there. Okay, I can't be there, but all I want is a girl to be with me at home, so that hasn't happened as well. I'm getting older now where I don't want to work, but I have to work, and soon I'm going to be able to get a pension, which was one thing that was good. I suppose I should end my story now with all the heartache and all the upset and all the worry. I found myself moving to Thailand permanently just after COVID, and that's where I remain. The reason I wanted to share my story, because it just shows how much Thailand can grab hold of you and how much it can make you do things and change things. As soon as I got there, I was hooked, and I couldn't think myself being anywhere else or want anything else from life. It was what life was meant to be. The problem was, everything I did was based on that need and desire to the point where nothing else mattered. And okay, I spent some time in Laos and that went wrong, and I spent time with another girl and that went wrong. I went back home for a year and the girl I sent money to, that went wrong, and everything went wrong. But now I'm in Thailand, and I am quite upset about how much things cost now, and how much things have changed, and how it's not what it used to be. But I can still have an occasionally good time every now and then. I'm in my mid-70s, but I don't feel like I am, and I'm living on about £1,000 a month, which isn't a lot of money, but I can just about get by, which is what it is. I want to say to anybody, if you're thinking about Thailand, or if you're thinking about moving somewhere and you're that way inclined, it can make you do things that you wouldn't do otherwise. If I never went to Thailand, I would still have had my house. That would have been worth over £100,000 plus now, and I'd have my pension still, and I'd have more money, and I could have moved to Thailand now, and probably had £3,000 a month as opposed to one. Thailand cost me my retirement. Thailand cost me a good retirement, and I think that's how I want to leave it. Thailand cost me the retirement that I'd always thought I would have. Thailand cost me the dream retirement, the retirement that you're meant to have, because I wanted things now. And wanting things now and doing the things I did, even though I was happy along the way, many times it got to the point where I wasn't happy for a lot of years before I was able to get back to Thailand. In my latter years, slaving away and doing things I don't want to do or didn't want to do, it made me get back to Thailand to have the retirement now, which isn't as good as it should have been. That's what I would probably say. Thailand cost me the retirement that I dreamt of and that I should be living. Even though I'm in Thailand, it's not like I'm able to do things I want to do all the time, because I don't have enough money to do that. That's the most important thing to say. If you want to go to Thailand, make sure you have enough money to be in Thailand. Not to be in Thailand just existing, doing things you don't want to do. Make sure that you have more than enough money to do the things you want to do in Thailand. Because although I can very occasionally do the things I want in Thailand, it's not like I can do them enough or all the time. And I found myself quite depressed for a number of days per week or a number of days per month. Probably 95% of the month I'm upset and I'm depressed because I'm not able to do what I want to do. When I do what I want to do, I can't enjoy it the same way because I know I won't be able to do that again for a long time. Thailand changed me and made me who I am today, which isn't the person I want to be, but it's all I am and all I can do, and that's where I would want to leave it.